The Pittsburgh Steelers have just made it clear which positions they're targeting in this year's NFL draft throughout the pre-draft visit process. It was quite obvious to begin with, but it just confirms everything that we already knew. So, before I get more into this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news and updates, and also like the video. Let's get right back into it. So, yesterday I made a video on every person the Pittsburgh Steelers brought in for a pre-draft visit to see the facility, to meet with the coaches, meet with the GM, meet with the owner, and just see the building in general. I made a video on that, so go ahead and check it out if you want to. I'm going to put the list of the players on the screen right now just in case you didn't see it. But these are the players that they met with. And this list tells a lot about what the Steelers' plans are for this year's NFL draft, and which positions they will be targeting early on in the draft and just all throughout it. Just in case if you don't know what the pre-draft visit process is, every team is allowed to bring in a max of 30 players to see the facility, meet with the coaches, and things like that. So these players are specifically picked out by the Steelers to come in and meet with the team. The pre-draft visit process is completely different from the pro day visits, where the team goes and meets with the players, maybe has a dinner with the player. That is considered formal, but this is considered more formal than that is. So let's get right into it. Looking at the list of players I showed at the beginning of the video, you've seen the wide receivers that they brought in. You might think, hey, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they really need a wide receiver, and they might even pick one at pick number 20. Well, if we're looking at the players the Steelers met with, they didn't really meet with the top caliber, the top wide receivers that are going to be there at pick number 20. They did not meet with those round 1 guys. They more so met with the round 2, round 3 wide receivers, not the players that are going to be picked very early in the first round that maybe the Steelers need to have if they fall to them. No, just looking at those wide receivers, like just say Ricky Purcell, for example. They met with him, they met with Malachi Corley. So they met with these players that are going to be like round 2, round 3 type of guys. So even though they really need a wide receiver, you can more so see, hey, maybe it won't be round 1, maybe it'll be round 2, round 3, when those players are set to fall to them and those players are projected to go. And to be honest, that was expected. I know many people are projecting the Steelers to pick at number 20 and maybe take an offensive lineman or even a wide receiver. But if you really expect the Steelers to take a wide receiver round 1, that rarely ever happens. Where do the Steelers do their work at wide receiver most of the time? Well, when you look at it, where did Deontay Johnson go? Where did Juju go? Where did Chase Claypool go? Where did George Pickens go? They all go really the second round. That's where the Steelers do most of their damage when they pick a wide receiver. And usually when they pick later round wide receivers or even second round guys, usually turn out well for the Steelers. So that's probably what they're going to do this season. Once again, in the draft process, maybe pick a wide receiver round 2, round 3, and hope they pan out. They usually have good kind of karma when it comes to picking wide receivers. They get rid of some guys that they probably don't want to pay anymore. Like just say Deontay Johnson, probably didn't want to give him a contract extension, trade him away this offseason. And then the next draft, they draft a wide receiver, and it usually pans out really well for them. So hopefully that's what happens again this season. If they pick a wide receiver round 2, round 3, hopefully it pans out for them once again, just like all those other guys that they selected did as well. But in terms of the pre-draft visit process, this is what I'm getting out of it in terms of the wide receiver position. Now, moving over to the offensive line. What I'm getting out of the offensive line is the Steelers are very interested in offensive linemen and all the top prospects, especially at center and offensive tackle. They basically met with all the top guys, or at least most of the top ones that you would think they would have interest in terms of offensive tackle. Like Amarius Mims, they brought in him. They brought in Troy Fautanu from Washington as well. So they brought in these top offensive tackles that have been projected to land at pick number 20 and maybe be selected by the Steelers. They also brought in the top centers as well, like Jackson Powers, Zach Frazier, Grant Burton, and players like that. So they brought in all the top centers. They brought in all the offensive tackles that are projected to be there at pick number 20. So you could see that Pittsburgh Steelers have real interest in picking an offensive lineman in this year's NFL draft in round 1 because of the guys that they brought in. And not only just the guys that they brought in, they actually brought in a lot of offense linemen too. They brought in a total of 14 offense linemen for pre-draft visits. And when you're using 14 out of 30 players that you're allowed to bring in on offense linemen, that means that you're targeting that position. And it makes it clear. We already knew this. We already knew they needed maybe a right tackle or left tackle, depending on where Broderick Jones is going to play. And then we knew they were already going to need center. But using 14 out of 30 players on offense linemen, they're definitely targeting offense linemen very early in this year's NFL draft, and they made it clear and they made a statement with the pre-draft visit process. Whether it's going to be offense tackle, whether it's going to be center, well, it's probably going to be who's the best player available at that selection, who the Steelers really think is more valuable. So the offense line category is a position the Steelers are really targeting, and we already knew this, but this just makes it clear. Now, moving over to defensive line, because the Steelers brought in quite a few defense linemen too, but like I said, same thing with the wide receivers. It was more so the second round, third round, fourth round type of guys that the Steelers brought in. They didn't really meet with all the high end talent that would go round one or that would be projected for the Steelers' first round pick. They didn't bring in those guys. They brought in the guys that are going to maybe fall in the draft and be later round selections. And the Steelers do kind of need defense linemen. It's not really a high priority. As players get older, like Cameron Heyward, maybe Larry Ogunjobi, then maybe they need more defense linemen. It's never enough defense linemen on the team, especially with how quickly they get tired and they have to be rotated in for. Yes, they just picked one in last year's draft in Keanu Benton, so it's not a high priority, but it looks like the Steelers want depth at that position, so they may be targeting it later in this year's NFL draft just by the pre-draft visit process. They also brought in 2 inside linebackers, so that means out of every inside linebacker in the draft, they brought in these specific 2 players. So I would say in the later end of the draft, if they want an inside linebacker and one of those 2 players are available, the players brought in, by the way, are Peyton Wilson and Junior Colson. If those 2 players are available later in the draft at a specific spot that they think is valuable, they're probably going to be selected, because there's no way the Steelers just brought in those 2 players specifically out of every inside linebacker in the draft. So they met with those 2 guys. It's not a high priority, but inside linebacker, they brought in those 2 as well. Another position that has me wondering if the Steelers may target in round 1 is cornerback. I've said this before, but I think cornerback is one of the biggest needs on the team. Probably the biggest need, because I believe cornerback, you really need it in this NFL right now to be able to put on wide receivers and not just have to double team wide receiver every single time. So having two cornerbacks, 3 cornerbacks on the roster would be really good. But obviously center, offense tackle are bigger needs, apparently, because of the holes that they have on the depth chart. But in terms of biggest need, I believe is cornerback. So the cornerback list that they brought in, looking at the players they brought in all basically the top first round talent, top maybe later first round, second round guys as well. So it has me wondering, will the Steelers select a cornerback? Just say maybe the top guy does fall to them. Someone they didn't expect to fall to them at pick number 20, would they select them? Because if you look at the players that Steelers brought in, guys like Nate Wiggins, guys like Cooper DeJean, they brought in these guys who are first round players who maybe will go in the first round and not be there for their second round pick. Those guys more than likely won't be there for the Steelers' second round pick and would only be there for the first round. So if they're bringing in these guys, maybe if they fell to them, maybe the Steelers would actually select them. So that's the position that has me wondering if the Steelers will go cornerback if someone does fall to them who they really like. But the second round pick, I believe, would be a cornerback. Just from these guys selected, or these guys, it's going to be a cornerback or wide receiver for the second round, 100%, unless a top offense line falls to them. So you could kind of see where the Steelers' draft plans are going just by the pre-draft visit process. That's why it's so important. If you look at the Steelers' first 4 selections in last year's NFL draft, it were all guys the Steelers brought in on the pre-draft visit process, from Broderick Jones, Keanu Benton, Darnell Washington, Joey Porter Jr. All those guys met with the Steelers and they hand select them to bring into the facility on the pre-draft visit process. So this is very important. It's not just something that goes under the radar and it's just like, oh, No one cares about that. They just bring in these guys to bring them in, just to meet with them. No, it has a big say in what the Steelers do and what their draft plans are. So this kind of exposes kind of what they want to do and which positions they are targeting. And they made it clear: offensive tackle, defensive tackle, or defense lineman in general, inside linebacker, wide receiver, cornerback. Those are 5 positions. They didn't bring in really anyone else in terms of tight end, running back. They didn't bring in safeties. So you can see the positions the Steelers are targeting, and these are it. It was quite clear already. We kind of could have already predicted this with just seeing the holes that the Steelers have on the roster, but this just confirms everything we already knew, like I said at the beginning of this video. But with that being said, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below on this topic and the Steelers' pre-draft visit process and the players they brought in, and what do you see the Steelers doing from round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4? Do you believe it'll be that order? Do you believe it's going to be offensive lineman, then wide receiver, cornerback? Or do you believe that maybe it was going to be a shocker and the Steelers may pick, just say, a wide receiver in the first round, or they may pick a cornerback in the first round? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Give me your mock draft, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for everything Pittsburgh Steelers news, updates, reactions, draft process coverage. I'll do it all. I covered all free agency. Now it's time to cover the draft, being 4 days away. Every new player, every undrafted player, I'll cover them, give an introduction to them on the channel. So with that being said, turn on notifications, and until next time, I'll see you guys all later. I'm out. Peace.